Welcome to A Chesapeake Treasure. I'm Pete Lesher, Chief Curator for the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum, and today we're going to take one last look at Exploring the Chesapeake, Mapping the Bay, our special exhibit of maps and charts going back in Chesapeake history all the way to the beginning of European settlement in the region and bringing it up right to the present day. Today we're going to look at a couple of really very famous maps from the early exploration of the Chesapeake Bay in the 17th century, starting with John Smith's own original map, the 1612 first edition of John Smith's map that documented his explorations of the Chesapeake during the summer of 1608, when he and a dozen and a half men went up and down the bay in a small open boat called a shallop, met with local tribes, communicated with them, traded with them, and kept detailed notes of the whole adventure. And when he came back, his notes were turned into, ultimately taken back to London and turned into this map, this wonderful engraving that gave us the first detailed impression of this new world of the Chesapeake for the English settlers of the day. John Smith was selling this place. This was part of marketing the Chesapeake Bay for new settlers and also for investors in the Virginia company that owned this colony, that invested in this new colony. Let's take a close look. Looking at the map closely, we'll notice first of all that the Chesapeake Bay is oriented so that north is off to the right, not at the top of the map. This was not uncommon in maps of this day. And so we see the south to north orientation running horizontally across this map rather than vertically as we're accustomed to in maps today. We also see the James, the York, the Rappahannock, the Potomac, all the principal tributaries of the Chesapeake Bay as he explored them, as he named them in many cases. And where he went up each of these rivers, he showed precisely how far he got, so that he placed a little cross here and here and here to show you exactly how far he'd gone. Now, in a few cases, the map goes beyond those crosses, and the information beyond that cross is information that he obtained from the Native Americans that he met along the way. So he told us exactly what he surveyed, what he explored himself, as opposed to what information that he was able to gather from oral sources. He locates native villages. He draws actually some of an illustration of one of the natives that he met, including the council of the chief Powhatan, with whom he had extensive dealings. The Virginia company had extensive dealings with Powhatan's nation. Smith's map was enormously influential, and it was the only map that was available for much of the 17th century. That is Smith's map and imitators of it. So Smith's map, once it was documented, nobody came back and did fresh survey work really for half a century after Smith. And so all of the other maps that were published for a couple of generations after Smith are really just the same or just re-engravings of Smith's work. Let's take a look at some of those others. By 1630, other map makers were using John Smith's map, re-engraving it. There were no copyright laws in these days, and simply publishing it as their own, putting their own name on it. And we get that with this Dutch cartographer, Willem Blau, in 1630, producing this clearly derivative map of John Smith's. We've got the same orientation of the Chesapeake Bay going horizontally across the map with north off to the right. It's not actually as crisply engraved or as detailed as Smith's map, but to the extent there is detail on Blau's map, it is all derived with the information that came straight off of John Smith's map. Willem Blau did not do his own survey work. He did not certainly go to North America, nor did he commission his own survey work. And if we let's take a close look at this one as well. Many of the elements that Smith had included in the original, such as the impression of the Native American that he encountered and such, remain in this map, as well as the little crosses. Some of those crosses still survive in this re-engraving of the map. But there are some curious inclusions, such as all of these mountains on the Delmarva Peninsula, which most of us today would be very hard-pressed to find. He just, without any evidence whatsoever, dropped a bunch of mountains in here, where Smith had just trees in his original. An inferior copy, but it was a copy. It spread the fame of Smith's map a bit wider than even the original had done, with all of its printings and editions. And this idea kept going on through much of the rest of the 17th century. Let's take a look at another example. So Henry Hondius, another Dutch cartographer from Amsterdam in this case, the son of a Dutch cartographer. The Dutch were big map makers because of all the explorations, all the trading, all the merchant business that the Dutch did particularly in the 17th century, made Holland also a center of chart making and map making as well. And so Henry Hondius, this Dutch map maker, makes yet another, in this case, the fifth derivative of John Smith's map. And clearly we see a number of, again, Hondius is not doing his own survey work. He's simply copying other copies. We see the mountains on the Delmarva Peninsula have become even more prominent in Hondius's edition of this map. The Native American, not nearly as attractive in Smith's original, and now he is mirrored. You know, of course, if you draw on a plate, you get the mirror image. So he probably had been drawing without mirroring it in his engraving. Nevertheless, all of these derivatives kept going until the early 1670s. More and more editions and derivatives of these various John Smith maps continued to come out, so that John Smith's survey work of the summer of 1608 continued to shape the way people envisioned the Chesapeake and the way the Chesapeake was promoted to potential settlers and potential investors in England and beyond throughout this period, throughout much of the 17th century. All of these remain visible in Exploring the Chesapeake, Mapping the Bay, our special exhibition, which runs until March 17th. So you still have a few weeks left to come in and see it before it closes for good. Thank you for joining me today for A Chesapeake Treasure.